Is there a chance for the wrongfully convicted people in Ukraine to succeed in review of the trumped-up cases filed against them? Case of Alexander Rafalsky. Verdict: sentencing to lifelong imprisonment. Businessman from Kiev, Alexander Rafalsky, had just turned 30 when he was detained. Though his family and lawyers have all the facts proving Alexander's innocence, as well as the evidence that he was horribly tortured, it took them 11 years to have been trying to initiate review of this trumped-up case. But all their efforts have failed because of the formidable barrier called Ukrainian justice. In 2001, Rafalsky family was about to complete construction of the shop in Tetiev town in Kiev area. The building was located in the center of the town, just in front of the coach station, 200 meters from the building of the local police department. When the construction was nearly finished, Alexander began receiving threats. His car had tires slashed several times and later it just was stolen. All those actions were accompanied with persistent proposals from unknown people to leave the town. Firstly, they were sending notes to me, better leg it out of here. I didn't take those threats seriously. Finally, my car was stolen. Alexander didn't take those threats seriously and later paid dearly. He paid for this his freedom. On 13 June 2001, Alexander Rafalsky was kidnapped from the apartment was rented by the members of law enforcement authorities. Mr. Tryasun, who was commanding officer of Berkut, special unit of Ukrainian police, stated on his report that Alexander Rafalsky was detained on 13 June 2011, and there was no any doubts about identification of his personality. As the officer explained, Alexander Rafalsky at first was trying to hide in the toilet room and then to escape through the air hole, and this was the reason to use hand-to-hand combat methods against him. The officer declared it had been the only time when physical force was used against Rafalsky. Investigator Karman handed down a decision not to initiate a criminal investigation, though it was reported in the same document that the forensic medical examination detected that Rafalsky had got the following injuries: abrasion marks on his knees, bruises on the left forearm, L-shaped scar in front of the left parietal tuber. Investigation, head by the prosecutor's office, detected that Rafalsky could have got those bodily injuries, while the officers of the law enforcement authorities were using hand-to-hand combat methods against him as well as special devices after he had tried to escape through the air hole. We have visited the apartment where Alexander Rafalsky was detained to make a photo of the air hole. As you can see, only a small cat might be able to get through it. It means that though the information provided by the representatives of Berkut and police who were arresting Rafalsky hadn't been checked by the prosecutor's office, it was used as a ground for the refusal decision not to initiate a criminal investigation. Even more issues arose regarding the further detention of Rafalsky. In accordance with the police reports, when he was arrested second time, they recorded him as an unidentified individual who had no ID but who called himself Rafalsky, and he was arrested as a person suspected of vagrancy, i.e. papers were amended or falsified. In total, Alexander spent in police department nearly 4 days starting from 13 June. The day he was detained till 16 June. During the next 9 days, he was kept away to temporary holding centers in Kiev region till 25th June 2001. And it was reported that only on 25th June he was officially arrested in accordance with decision of Kiev regional prosecutor. Alexander will never forget those horrible days. He was subjected to endless torture and ill treatment, including suffocation. He was taken to some woods where was subjected to a mock execution and had to dig a grave for himself. He could hear bullets over his head. Electrical wires were attached to his body. "You are a beast. Just tell us everything." They were kicking me all the time. My hands and feet were cuffed behind my back. They used one more cuff to join those that already had been put on me. And there were two generals. All three persons came in when I was beaten in the room. Then Burmakov and his colleagues left the room. They left the room, others came in. I was handcuffed in the floor. They were pouring tea all over my face. They say, "You, Brot, are you going to give your money away?" These were all their words. And this man, goodness, what was his name? Kept it in my mind all the time, but now it seems to have gone entirely out of my mind. When trying to drown me, they attached a beam to my feet and threw me into the lake. I got my mouth full of water and algae, and the doctor who had brought me back to life said me I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And first what I saw was Burmakov, the Colonel Burmakov. He said to me, "Bastard, you'll do what I want." I replied, "I'm not a bastard, I'm a human being. I'm Rafalsky, remember this once and for all. I will never let you drag me and my family in the mud." I said to him I would better die than sign something that I would never give up. I would not do what they were demanding from me, and that's it. You want to kill me? Kill. Do whatever you want. Then Burmakov understood that really. Berkut officers said, "What are you doing?" He is, sorry for such words, has already pissed and shit on himself. His ears and nose are bleeding. His nose is broken and all other. They say, "What are you doing?" Burmakov replied to the officers of Berkut, "Cover off, Shen. You are obliged to obey our commands. You will do what we tell you. Just take him and carry out." Those tortures resulted in two surgeries that Alexander had to undergo later. Several times he reported regarding tortures and ill treatment. But Vasil Kerman, who was investigating the criminal case, made a prescription claiming that police officers had acted towards Alexander within the limits prescribed by law. Alexander's lawyers were able to get the copy of this prescription only 8 years after it was issued. But prosecutor's office kept insisting that there had no been facts of ill treatment and tortures. Namely, ill treatment and tortures were used to find the primary evidence and became a basis for the investigation because there had been no any proofs of Alexander's guilt found. The investigation based on the acknowledgement of guilt that Alexander never signed but which was signed by other persons involved in the case. And what was Alexander charged for? On 4th April 2001, not far away from the Nichupka village of Tetyev region, during carrying out field work, there 4 human heads and arms were found. According to the preliminary conclusion provided by Kiev Bureau of Forensic Medical Expertise, those found bones might have belonged to 3 women and a boy. The dead bodies were found later as well. We don't know what way the investigators took to find the trace of namely Rafalsky's shop, as well as the reasons why they had got interested in it. But police believed that namely Alexander had organized a criminal group suspected in killing people and disjoining their bodies in the territory of the half-constructed shop during 1998-2000. Also, investigators believed that aside of Rafalsky, who was considered an organizer, there were other members of the criminal group such as Stepan Chernyak, Vyacheslav Baranovsky, Volodymyr Kharchenko. Mentioned persons really were familiar with Alexander because they had worked in the shop construction. One by one, not being able to resist tortures, all of them acknowledged their guilt. It should be mentioned that none of those convicted people had access to a lawyer during the initial questioning. After neither book nor suffocation worked, they fulfilled the order of the senior doctor to remove my cast and began to bend my leg. Let's consider that I have here a metallic loop that keeps my leg from any bending at all. After this I began to confess everything. I said, "Let me quickly sign up whatever you want." Investigators claimed the following people had been identified as the victims of the members of the criminal group: Victoria Ovras and her daughter Anna Ovras, Tatiana Ikonnikova, Olena Harchenko, sister of Stepan Chernyak, electrician Viktor Yuryov, who was 38 when he was killed. And in the investigators' report, the boy's head found in the field suddenly turned into the head of the 38-year-old man. The body of Olena Harchenko has not been found so far. Also, investigators had the report of a policeman claiming that in 2002, i.e. 2 years later after being killed, Olena Harchenko tried to find her husband in Tetiev. Though many neighbors saw her, this evidence has never been taken into consideration by the investigators. We went upstairs. I opened the apartment. It could easily notice that the woman was a drinker. She was trembling. Her arms were trembling. Could you recognize her in photos? We have some here. Who do you think look like Elena Harchenko? Here she is, and here. Show us. Here she is. Thus, whom do you pick up among these three? She is, but her hair was longer. I can recognize her anyway. Is this that one in the middle? Yes. Sister of Yurova seated a bit on the chair in the court, then stood up and said, "My brother hasn't been killed. He was seen in Troyeshino district of Kiev. I am not going to participate in this clown's fooling." The investigators believed that all murdered people considered as victims of Rafalsky group were killed after picnic. It means all the victims should have eaten a lot and had been enormously drunk. But here we see a contradiction. A forensic scientist reported that stomachs of the murdered persons had been empty, and there had not been alcohol found neither in their blood nor in muscles. The investigators insisted that the bodies had been disjointed in the building of half-constructed shop, but results of the forensic examination disproved this version. Also, investigators believed that the victims' bodies had been carried out in Ford Scorpio car belonging to Rafalsky, but the results of the examination disapproved this belief as well. Results of the forensic exam show that no deadly poison was found in the soil. It means that bodies couldn't be hidden in the territory of the shop. Since concrete is a material that able to absorb liquid and serves as a sponge, it is logical that it might be seen whether blood was there or not. And it means the forensic exam found nothing, just nothing. It was placed in the medical records of Anna and Victoria Ovras that they had undergone the appendix operation, but bodies found in the field had appendixes. Relatives of Victoria Ovras confirmed that she had been pregnant, but none of the bodies had evidence of the pregnancy. Thus, it is a fair assumption to say that the bodies found by the Denichevka village cannot be identified as the victims mentioned by the investigators. Also, it is clear that the circumstances, the place and time of the crime differ from those described by the investigators. On the other side, the police definitely had reasons to try to blame someone by all means. Firstly, the initial reason could be the shop itself. After Alexander was arrested, his mother was asked many times to sell the shop for a very low price, for the reason that several people had been murdered there. Secondly, the investigator who was conducting the case suddenly got promoted and, without closing the case, started working in General Prosecutor's office. Above-mentioned facts show that all reports on this trumped-up case were directed to the investigator, who actually was the person to trump the case up. And no doubt all the police officers participating in solving the case have been promoted. It comes into our mind that police kidnapped and tortured the man in order to get his business, but Rafalsky happened to be a hard nut to crack. Of course, they couldn't just discharge Rafalsky after he had been tortured, as they were afraid of being charged for their actions. That is why they accused him and his familiars of killing people whose bodies had been found in the field. The aim was to sentence Alexander to life imprisonment. The reason to beat me was to find out where I was keeping my big money. Firstly, they didn't blame me in any murders. Firstly, they just were beating me. No any murders mentioned, no any words said about Tetiev, nothing. First thing I was tortured for: where do you keep your big money? Which accounts? Where do your parents keep money? Where is the cash? When the criminal case was heard in the Kiev appeal court, Judge Gurin didn't take into consideration neither proofs provided by the lawyers nor witnesses' testimonies who claimed they hadn't been familiar with the defendants. As to the witnesses, they even weren't allowed to look through the papers they had to sign. There was a witness who said, "I see you first time in my life, young man." He said, "I haven't written this. I was called by the investigator Carmen, who frightened me and said that if I wouldn't sign this." In some way, audio-recorded materials of the court session have disappeared from the court archive. Testimonies given by witnesses against themselves in reports called Acknowledgement of Guilt were analyzed by the independent experts. In their conclusions, it is said that the murders could not be carried out in the way described in the Acknowledgements of Guilt. Approach of inevitability of punishment serves as a ground for criminal legislation in any civilized country. It means that every person who has committed a crime should be punished regardless whether the criminal is a common citizen or an official. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, there is no efficient mechanism for investigating cases of torture. This fact was noted in the decision of European Court of Human Rights on case Kaverzin vs. Ukraine. It is declared there that the absence of the efficient investigation procedure on torture and ill-treatment cases is a systemic breach of Article 3 of the European Convention in respect of the procedural issue. Then we ask again, how could this happen that those officers firstly tried to physically destroy a citizen and then foredoom him to lifelong sufferings, all in the name of Ukraine? There is a way out. Only hope keeps me alive. I've been living my life with a great hope to get out of the prison and spend the rest of my life with my family and children.
Только вот живу надеждой семьи.